The chamber was enormous, built to hold thousands of representatives from across the galaxy. Crystal spires reached up toward a ceiling so high it disappeared into artificial clouds. The walls shimmered with colors that didn't exist in human perception, requiring special filters in Ambassador Chen's eyes just to see them without going mad. Every species in the Galactic Council had a seat here, arranged in careful circles that represented their status, their military might, and their economic power. Humanity's seat was in the back corner, squeezed between the filthy trash collectors and the marine fungus farmers. It was a small metal chair, uncomfortable and cold. Chen didn't mind. She'd sat in worse places. The Emperor stood at the center of it all, his four arms spread wide in a gesture of dominance. His species, the Krell, had ruled the galaxy for 3,000 years. They were tall, covered in scales that caught the light like oil on water, and they never smiled. Smiling was for weak species, the Krell believed, species that needed to show submission. The human colony on Xerxes 7 has violated galactic law, the Emperor announced, his voice booming through translation devices that made it sound like thunder in 100 different languages. They have refused to pay the imperial tax. They have refused to acknowledge Krell authority. They have mocked our collectors and threatened our soldiers. Chen reached into her jacket pocket and pulled out a cigarette. It was real tobacco grown in the hydroponics bay of the human embassy ship. Expensive as hell, but worth every credit. She put it between her lips and sparked her lighter. The chamber fell silent. Every eye, compound or simple, turned toward her. Smoking was forbidden in the council chamber. It was considered barbaric, a sign of primitive chemical dependency. The Krell particularly hated it, claiming that human smoke carried toxins that could damage their delicate respiratory systems. Chen took a long drag and blew smoke toward the ceiling. She didn't blow it toward the Emperor. That would have been rude. Ambassador Chen, the Emperor said, his voice dropping to a dangerous rumble. You dare smoke in this sacred chamber during an official declaration? Chen shrugged. You were saying something about Xerxes 7. The Emperor's scales darkened, shifting through colors that indicated rage in Krell body language. Your colony has violated our laws. The punishment is clear. We will send our fleet. We will blockade their world. We will teach them respect. Okay, Chen said. She took another drag. The Emperor stared at her. So did everyone else in the chamber. The filthy trash collector next to her shifted uncomfortably, his collection tubes twitching nervously. Did you hear what I said? The Emperor asked. We are declaring war on your colony. I heard you, Chen said. She tapped ash into a small container she'd brought specifically for this purpose. You're sending your fleet to blockade Xerxes 7 because they won't pay your tax. The imperial tax is law. All colonies must pay. Sure, Chen said, but we're not going to. The chamber erupted. Representatives stood, their various appendages waving in excitement or alarm. The filthy next to her actually rolled away from his seat, trying to put distance between himself and the insane human. The marine fungus farmer released a cloud of spores that smelled like panic. The Emperor raised all four arms. Silence fell again, immediate and total. You refuse? He asked, his voice soft now, dangerous. I don't refuse, Chen said. I'm just telling you what's going to happen. You'll send your fleet. It won't work. You'll lose ships. You'll lose face. And then we'll have to have another meeting where I smoke another cigarette and you yell about something else. The Emperor's scales went through several colors Chen didn't recognize. She'd studied Krell physiology, but apparently there were emotions so extreme they didn't make it into the diplomatic handbooks. You believe your tiny colony can withstand the Imperial fleet? The Emperor leaned forward. We have 10,000 warships. We have weapons that can crack planets. We have ruled this galaxy since before your species discovered fire. Chen nodded. That's all true. You've got a lot of ships. Very impressive ships. I've seen the specifications. She took another drag. But here's the thing. You've been the biggest guy in the room for so long that you forgot what it's like when someone punches back. Are you threatening the Empire? Nope. Chen blew smoke again, this time in a long, steady stream. I'm just a diplomat. I don't make threats. I'm just telling you what's going to happen because I've seen this before. That got the Emperor's attention. His head tilted, a Krell gesture of curiosity. You have seen this before? Not with you specifically, Chen admitted. But yeah, I've seen it. Big Empire decides to pick on what they think is an easy target, sends in the fleet, expects quick surrender, then finds out the target isn't so easy after all. The Emperor laughed. It was a sound like grinding stone, meant to intimidate. Your colony has no warships. Our intelligence reports show mining equipment, civilian transports, and a communications array. You have 30,000 colonists, mostly farmers and engineers. What will they fight us with? Farming equipment? Probably, Chen said. Humans are creative like that. She finished her cigarette and carefully extinguished it in her container. Then she pulled out another one and lit it immediately. The Emperor's scales flickered with color she was pretty sure meant he was considering having her executed right there in the chamber. Let me tell you about Xerxes 7, Chen said, settling back in her uncomfortable chair. It's a mining colony, like you said. We found it about 20 years ago. Nice place, if you like rocks and dust. Lots of minerals, decent atmosphere, a little cold but nothing we couldn't handle. So we sent colonists. Tough people, the kind who don't mind living on the edge of nowhere. She paused to take a drag. The chamber was completely silent now. Even the usual background hum of translation devices seemed muted. Those colonists, they built everything themselves, Chen continued. Every building, every road, every farm. They dug the mines with their own hands. They figured out how to make the soil work for earth crops. They had kids, started families, made a life. And then, about 6 months ago, your tax collectors showed up. As is proper, the Emperor said, all colonies in imperial space must contribute to the Empire's maintenance. Xerxes 7 isn't in imperial space, Chen said mildly. It's in unclaimed territory. We checked, did a full survey, filed all the paperwork, made sure we weren't stepping on anyone's toes. It's ours, fair and square. The Empire claims all space within 500 light-years of our core worlds. Since when? Since now. We are the Empire. We make the laws. Chen nodded slowly. Right, that's what I thought you'd say. She stood up, cigarette dangling from her lips. Okay, here's what's going to happen. You're going to send your fleet to Xerxes 7. My government is going to file a formal protest which you'll ignore. The colonists are going to shoot down your ships when they try to enforce the blockade. You're going to escalate, they're going to escalate back, and eventually we're going to end up in a full shooting war. Your confidence is misplaced, the Emperor said. We will crush them. Maybe, Chen said. But here's the thing you need to understand about humans. We're stubborn, stupidly stubborn. Those colonists on Xerxes 7, they built that world with their own hands. They've got kids there, families, homes. You think they're just going to roll over because you show up with fancy ships and tell them they owe you money? They will obey or be destroyed, Chen smiled. It wasn't a nice smile. That's what the Vrex said about the colony on New Terra. That was 50 years ago, before the Empire expanded this far. The Vrex had a smaller empire than yours, only about 200 systems, but they were mean. They showed up at New Terra and demanded tribute. The colonists told them to shove it. The Vrex blockaded the planet. I know this story, the Emperor said. The Vrex are extinct. Yeah, Chen said. They are. She let that hang in the air for a moment, watching the colors ripple across the Emperor's scales. Around the chamber, representatives shifted nervously. Everyone knew the story of the Vrex. It was taught as a cautionary tale in every diplomatic academy in the galaxy. The Vrex blockade lasted 6 months, Chen continued. They thought they could starve the humans out, but humans were good at improvising. The colonists converted their mining equipment into weapons. They used their ore processors to create explosive charges. They turned their cargo shuttles into missiles. And when they had enough weapons, they broke the blockade. 10 ships, the Emperor said. The humans destroyed 10 Vrex vessels in that engagement. A victory, yes, but hardly significant. That was just the beginning, Chen said. Because once the colonists broke free, they didn't stop. They followed the Vrex fleet back to their nearest base and destroyed it. Then they hit the next base, and the next. They didn't have fancy warships or advanced weapons. They had mining vessels and a whole lot of anger. The Vrex made tactical errors. The Vrex underestimated humans, Chen corrected. That was their only error. By the time they realized what they were dealing with, half their empire was in flames. Earth hadn't even officially joined the war yet. That was just one colony, angry about being pushed around. She stubbed out her second cigarette and immediately lit a third. The Emperor watched her with something that might have been concern flickering through his scale patterns. "Let me tell you what makes humans dangerous," Chen said, her voice quiet now, conversational. "It's not that we're strong. There are stronger species. It's not that we're smart. There are smarter species. It's not even that we're aggressive, though we are. The thing that makes humans dangerous is that we don't know when to quit. All species fight when threatened. Not like humans," Chen said. "Most species, they fight until the odds turn against them, and then they surrender or retreat or negotiate. That's logical. That's smart. Humans don't do that. We fight until we win or until we're dead. And we usually figure out a way to win. We're too stupid to understand when we're beaten." "That sounds like a weakness, not a strength." Chen laughed. "You'd think so, wouldn't you? But here's the thing. When you can't break us, when we keep coming no matter what you do, when we turn everything we have into a weapon and just keep fighting, what do? How do you beat that?" The Emperor didn't answer. Around the chamber, representatives listened in absolute silence. Some of them had fought humans before, in small conflicts over resources or territory. They understood what Chen was talking about. "Xerxes 7 has 30,000 colonists," Chen said. "Farmers, miners, engineers, teachers, kids. Regular people who just want to live their lives. But if you try to take their home, they'll fight you with everything they have. They'll turn their tractors into tanks. They'll use their mining explosives as bombs. They'll fight with their bare hands if they have to. And behind them, supporting them, there are 15 billion more humans who will see what you did and decide they need to do something about it. Are you threatening us with your entire species?" The Emperor's scales darkened again. "No," Chen said patiently. "I'm explaining reality. You declare war on one human colony, you declare war on all of us. That's how we work. We're tribal like that. And once you're at war with humanity, you're at war until one side is gone. We don't do half measures. We don't do negotiated surrenders. We win or we die, and we're really, really good at winning." She finished her third cigarette and stood fully, meeting the Emperor's gaze directly. In Krell culture, a subordinate never looked a superior in the eye. It was the highest form of disrespect. Chen stared at him until his scales rippled with colors she recognized as shock. "Here's my advice," she said. "Forget about Xerxes 7. Forget about your tax. Pretend you never heard of that colony. Because if you send your fleet, if you start this war, it's not going to end the way you think it will. It's going to end with human ships in orbit around your capital world, and me sitting in this chamber asking whether you want to surrender or keep fighting." The Emperor's four arms clenched into fists. "You dare?" "I dare," Chen interrupted, "because it's my job to tell you the truth, even when you don't want to hear it. That's what diplomats do. We're supposed to prevent wars, not start them. So I'm telling you, clearly and plainly, that attacking Xerxes 7 is a mistake. Don't do it. And if we do?" Chen shrugged again. She reached for another cigarette, then paused, looking at the pack. Only 2 left. She'd have to ration them for the rest of the meeting. Then I guess we'll have a war. And when it's over, maybe the next empire will be smart enough to learn from your mistakes. She sat back down in her uncomfortable chair and lit cigarette number 4. The chamber remained silent for a long moment. Then the Emperor turned away from her, addressing the full council. The Imperial fleet will deploy to Xerxes 7 within 1 standard cycle, he announced. This council is dismissed. Representatives filed out quickly, eager to escape the tension in the chamber. The filthy trash collector practically fled. The marine fungus farmer left behind a trail of nervous spores. Within minutes, only Chen and the Emperor remained. You should have shown respect, the Emperor said quietly. I showed you honesty, Chen replied. That's better than respect. My fleet will crush your colony. Maybe, or maybe you'll learn the same lesson the Vrex did. Chen stood and started walking toward the exit. She paused at the doorway and looked back. For what it's worth, I hope you're right. I hope your fleet shows up and my people surrender immediately. I hope this ends without bloodshed. But I've been doing this job for 20 years, and I've never seen that happen, not with humans. Why do you fight so hard? The Emperor asked. Other species understand the value of peace, of submission to superior force. Why can't humans? Chen thought about that for a moment, taking a long drag on her cigarette. Because we remember, she said finally. Every human, no matter where they are or what they're doing, they carry memories of all the times someone tried to push us around. All the tyrants and empires and bullies who thought we'd be easy targets. And every single time, we pushed back. It's in our DNA now. It's who we are. That sounds exhausting. It is, Chen admitted, but it's better than the alternative. She walked out of the chamber, leaving a trail of smoke behind her. The Emperor watched her go, his scales cycling through colors that indicated deep thought. He had ruled for 60 years. He had conquered 20 species. He had never met anyone who responded to threats with such casual indifference. Perhaps, he thought, he should investigate this Vrex situation more carefully. Perhaps the humans were bluffing, trying to intimidate him with stories of past victories. Or perhaps they were telling the truth, and he was about to make the greatest mistake of his reign. He would send the fleet, of course. He had announced it before the council. He couldn't back down now without losing face. But maybe, he thought, he would send scouts first. Maybe he would observe these humans more carefully before committing to full war. The Emperor left the chamber and returned to his palace. Behind him, the lights dimmed automatically, leaving the vast space empty and dark. Chen made it back to the human embassy ship before allowing herself to feel the fear. Her hands shook as she lit another cigarette, her second to last one. She'd played it cool in the chamber, acted confident and unconcerned, but the truth was she had no idea if Xerxes 7 could actually hold off the Imperial fleet. She'd told the truth about human stubbornness. She'd told the truth about the Vrex. But that was 50 years ago, against a smaller empire with older technology. The Krell had weapons humanity had never faced before. They had numbers that would make even human determination seem inadequate. Her assistant, a young diplomat named Taylor, met her at the airlock. How did it go? About as well as expected, Chen said. The Emperor declared war. I smoked. He got mad. Standard diplomatic meeting. Are they really going to attack Xerxes 7? Yeah. Chen headed for her office, needing the privacy. Get me a secure line to Earth, full encryption, and send a message to Xerxes 7. Tell them the fleet is coming. Tell them to prepare. Prepare how? They're farmers and miners. Chen smiled grimly. They're humans. They'll figure something out. Taylor hesitated. Ambassador, do you really think we can win this? The Krell Empire has never lost a war. They've never fought humans before, Chen said. Not really fought them. There's a difference between small border skirmishes and actual war. She paused, cigarette halfway to her lips. But honestly, I don't know. I talked a big game in there, but I don't know. What I do know is that if we back down now, if we pay their tax and admit they own Xerxes 7, then they'll own everything. Every human colony, every station, every ship will be subjects of the empire forever. And if we fight, then at least we go down fighting. That counts for something. She took a drag and stared out the viewport at the massive Krell station that housed the council chambers. Besides, I meant what I said. Humans don't quit. Even if we lose Xerxes 7, even if the fleet crushes the colony, Earth won't stop. Mars won't stop. Every human world will see what happened and decide that the Empire needs to pay for it. Total war, Taylor said quietly. Total war, Chen agreed. That's what they're choosing, even if they don't realize it yet. The Krell think they're punishing one disobedient colony. What they're actually doing is waking up a species that's really, really good at holding grudges. She finished her cigarette and carefully saved the last one in her pack for later. She had a feeling she'd need it before this was over. Then she sat at her desk and began composing the message to Earth. It needed to be clear, factual, and completely honest about what was coming. The Galactic Empire had declared war. Now humanity would respond. And the galaxy, Chen thought, was about to learn a very expensive lesson about why you didn't corner humans unless you were absolutely sure you could finish the job. On Xerxes 7, the colonists received the warning 6 hours later. They gathered in the main settlement square, 30,000 people trying to understand what was happening. Governor Sarah Lynn stood on a makeshift stage and read Ambassador Chen's message aloud. "The Krell Empire has declared war on our colony," she said, her voice steady despite the fear she felt. "They're sending a fleet to blockade our world and force us to pay their tax. Ambassador Chen says they'll arrive within one standard cycle, which gives us about 4 days." The crowd erupted in angry shouts and frightened questions. Lynn waited for them to quiet down before continuing. "I won't lie to you," she said. "We're not soldiers. We don't have warships or advanced weapons. We're farmers and miners and engineers. But we're also humans, and humans don't surrender when someone tries to steal what we built. So here's what we're going to do." She outlined the plan she'd been forming since receiving the message. Every piece of mining equipment would be converted into weapons. Every engineer would work on creating defensive systems. Every farmer would help supply the effort. They'd use the ore processors to make explosives. They'd use the cargo shuttles as kamikaze weapons if necessary. They'd turn their entire colony into a fortress. "We didn't ask for this fight," Lynn said. "We just wanted to live our lives in peace. But the Empire wants to take that from us, so we're going to show them what happens when you push humans too far. We're going to fight. We're going to win. And if we can't win, we're going to make them regret ever hearing the name Xerxes 7. The crowd roared approval. Fear was still there, but now it mixed with anger and determination. These people had left Earth to build something new. They'd worked for 20 years to make this colony succeed. They had children who'd never seen Earth, who thought of Xerxes 7 as home. They weren't about to let some distant empire take it all away. Work began immediately. The mining crews pulled every piece of heavy equipment from the excavation sites and brought it to the settlement. Engineers swarmed over the machinery, analyzing how it could be modified. The ore processors, normally used to extract pure metals from raw rock, could be recalibrated to create shaped charges. The drilling rigs could be mounted on vehicles and used as kinetic weapons. The cargo shuttles could be loaded with explosives and guided by remote control. It was improvisation on a massive scale, exactly the kind of chaotic creativity that humans excelled at. While other species would have focused on proper military doctrine and established tactics, the colonists simply asked themselves, "What can we use as a weapon?" and then made it work. A young engineer named David Park came up with the idea of using the mining drones. The colony had hundreds of them, small autonomous craft designed to locate mineral deposits and return samples. They weren't fast or heavily built, but they could fly in atmosphere and they could carry payloads. Within 12 hours, Park and his team had converted 50 drones into improvised missiles. Another group, led by a former Earth military officer named Janet Rodriguez, focused on ground defenses. She'd served in the South American conflicts before retiring and joining the colonists, and she knew how to think like a soldier. She organized the colonists into squads, assigned defensive positions, and began drilling them on basic combat tactics. "We're not going to try to be professional soldiers," Rodriguez told them during the first training session. "We don't have time for that, but we can be professional survivors. We can learn to shoot straight, follow orders, and watch each other's backs. That's enough." The colonist children watched all this preparation with wide eyes. Some of them wanted to help, to be part of the defense. Lynn made the decision to evacuate all children under 16 to the deep mines, where they'd be protected if the settlement was bombarded from orbit. Parents argued, kids cried, but eventually everyone agreed it was the right choice. The mines were deep enough and well shielded enough to survive most orbital strikes. On the fourth day, the Krell fleet arrived. 75 warships dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the system, their sensors sweeping across Xerxes 7 immediately. The fleet commander, Admiral Thar, studied the readings with growing confusion. "This makes no sense," he told his second officer. "The intelligence report said this was a mining colony with minimal defenses. These readings show active weapon systems, military-grade sensors, and what appears to be a significant defensive network. Perhaps the humans brought in reinforcements," the second officer suggested. "There's no sign of military vessels in orbit. No destroyers, no fighters, nothing but civilian craft." Thar zoomed in on the sensor displays, trying to make sense of what he was seeing. "Send them the standard surrender demand. Let's see how they respond." The message was simple and direct: surrender or be destroyed. Governor Lynn received it and immediately sent back her own message, equally simple: "Come and take it." Admiral Thar's scales darkened with anger. "Begin the blockade. Position ships to cover all orbital approaches. No vessel leaves or enters this planet without our approval." The fleet moved into position, a massive show of force designed to intimidate the colonists below. 75 warships, each one capable of devastating entire cities, formed a perfect blockade pattern. It was textbook military doctrine, the kind of operation the Krell had perfected over centuries of conquest. That's when the first mining drone hit the flagship. It came in fast and low, using the planet's magnetic field to hide its approach until the last second. Park had programmed it to target the largest ship's engine clusters, and his programming was good. The drone impacted at high speed, its payload of mining explosives detonating directly against the flagship's main thruster assembly. The explosion wasn't big enough to destroy the ship, but it was big enough to cripple it. The flagship's engines went offline, leaving it drifting in orbit. Admiral Thar grabbed his command console to keep from being thrown to the deck as alarms blared throughout the ship. "What was that?" he demanded. "Missile strike, sir. Small craft, possibly a fighter." "I thought they didn't have fighters." "They don't, according to intelligence." Before Thar could respond, 49 more mining drones hit the fleet. They swarmed up from the planet like angry insects, each one targeting a different ship, each one carrying enough explosives to cause serious damage. The Krell crews tried to shoot them down, but the drones were small and fast, and the colonists had programmed them with evasive patterns learned from studying bird flight. 3 Krell warships lost their engines completely. 7 more suffered damage to weapon systems. The rest of the fleet opened fire on the planet, trying to hit the launch sites, but the colonists had already moved their equipment. The orbital bombardment hit empty ground, wasting ammunition and achieving nothing. "Pull back," Thar ordered. "Reform at 10,000 kilometers. Get me damage reports from all vessels." The fleet retreated, leaving the close orbit they'd established. On Xerxes 7, the colonists cheered. They'd actually hurt the Empire. They'd driven off the first attack. It felt like victory, even though everyone knew this was just the beginning. Chen heard about the engagement 2 hours later, when Earth's long-range sensors picked up the energy signatures from the explosions. She was in a meeting with the human defense minister when the report came through. "They did it," the minister said, reading the data. "They actually damaged the Krell fleet with mining drones." "Of course they did," Chen said. She pulled out her last cigarette and lit it, savoring the taste. She'd been saving it for exactly this moment. "I told the Emperor what would happen. He didn't believe me. The Krell will escalate now. They'll bring in more ships, heavier weapons. Probably. And then Xerxes 7 will escalate back. And then the Krell will escalate again. That's how these things work." Chen blew smoke toward the ceiling of the minister's office. "The question is, how long before Earth officially enters the conflict? The president wants to avoid full war if possible." "Then the president is going to be disappointed," Chen said flatly. "This is happening whether we want it or not. The Krell declared war on one colony. When they crush that colony, which other human worlds will feel safe? When they demand taxes from Mars or Europa or New Singapore, will those colonies just pay up because they're scared?" The minister didn't answer. They both knew the answer. Humans didn't work that way. "We need to start preparing," Chen continued, "not for a police action or a limited engagement, for actual war, full commitment, because that's what the Krell are going to force us into, and we need to be ready. The fleet can be mobilized within 2 weeks. Do it, and send word to all the colonies. Tell them what's happening. Tell them what Xerxes 7 did. Make sure everyone knows that humans fight back." Chen finished her cigarette, stubbing it out carefully. "And get me another meeting with the Emperor. I want to give him one more chance to back down before this gets really ugly." "You think he'll take it?" "No," Chen admitted, "but I have to try. That's the job." Back at Xerxes 7, Governor Lin was dealing with the aftermath of their first engagement. 3 colonists had been injured when a piece of Krell debris crashed near the settlement. Doctors treated them in the colony's small medical center, while engineers assessed the damage to the surrounding buildings. "We got lucky," Rodriguez told Lin during their evening briefing. "That orbital bombardment could have killed hundreds if they'd targeted the settlement directly. They were going after our launch sites, which means they think we have dedicated military installations." "Should we correct that assumption?" Lin asked. Rodriguez smiled. "Hell no. Let them waste ammunition shooting at empty ground. Every missile they fire at nothing is one less they can use against us. Besides, we're already moving the launch equipment again. By tomorrow, we'll be set up in a completely different location. How many more drones do we have?" "Park says he can convert another 100, maybe more, but we're running low on explosives. The mining charges can only be stretched so far." Lin nodded, thinking. "What about the ore processors? Can we use them to make more explosives?" "Possibly. I'll put a team on it." Rodriguez paused. "Governor, you know they're going to come back harder next time. We hurt them, embarrass them in front of the whole galaxy. They're not going to let that stand." "I know, but what choice do we have? Surrender and become slaves to the Empire? I'd rather die fighting." "So would everyone else here. But we should start thinking long-term. If we're going to hold out until Earth can send help, we need supplies, ammunition, more weapons. Can Ambassador Chen get us anything?" "I'll ask," Lin said. "But the nearest human military base is 3 weeks away at maximum speed. We might have to hold out on our own for a while. Then we'd better get creative." That became the colony's motto over the next week. Get creative. When they ran low on explosives, the engineers figured out how to use the ore processors to create thermite charges. When the Krell fleet tried to jam their communications, the colonists switched to old-fashioned radio signals that the Krell systems couldn't block. When the Empire brought in ground troops to establish a forward base, the colonists used their mining vehicles to dig tunnels and launch guerrilla attacks. Admiral Thar found himself fighting a war unlike anything in his experience. The colonists had no formal military structure, no chain of command that made sense, no tactics that followed any recognized doctrine. They just kept attacking, kept adapting, kept finding new ways to make his life difficult. His superiors at Imperial Command were getting impatient. They'd expected a quick victory, a demonstration of Krell power that would remind the galaxy who was in charge. Instead, they were getting daily reports of damaged ships, destroyed ground bases, and colonists who refused to surrender no matter how much force was applied. Increase the bombardment, the Imperial Command ordered. Target the settlement directly, break their will to fight. Thar didn't like that order. Targeting civilians was technically legal under Imperial law, but it felt wrong somehow. These humans weren't soldiers. They were farmers and engineers defending their homes. There was something admirable about that, even if they were enemies. But orders were orders. Thar directed his fleet to target the main settlement, preparing for a sustained bombardment that would level every building and kill everyone inside. That's when the human fleet arrived. They dropped out of hyperspace with the precision of a military operation. 25 destroyers and 5 carriers forming a defensive screen around Xerxes 7. The carriers immediately launched fighters, while the destroyers moved to engage the Krell fleet. Within seconds, the situation went from a siege to a full naval battle. Chen watched the tactical display from her ship, now part of the human fleet. She'd gotten her wish. Earth had officially entered the war. The president had given the order 12 hours ago, after a video of the Krell bombardment went viral across human space. Watching families huddled in shelters while warships fired on their homes had triggered something in the human population. Suddenly, everyone wanted to fight. "Ambassador," the fleet admiral said over the comm, "we're engaging the Krell fleet now. You might want to secure yourself. This could get rough." "I'm fine where I am," Chen said. She'd found a spot in the observation deck where she could watch the battle unfold. It seemed appropriate somehow. She'd started this, in a way, by refusing to back down when the Emperor made his threats. Now she got to watch humans and Krell kill each other in the vacuum of space. The battle was brutal and efficient. Human ships were smaller and faster than Krell vessels, built for quick strikes and evasive maneuvers. The Krell ships were heavily armored and heavily armed, designed to withstand punishment and deliver devastating attacks. It was the classic matchup of speed versus power. For the first hour, the two fleets traded shots without either side gaining a clear advantage. Then the Xerxes 7 colonists joined the fight with their modified mining equipment. Cargo shuttles loaded with explosives rammed Krell ships. Mining drones swarmed the enemy fleet like angry bees. Even the ground-based weapons managed to hit a few vessels in low orbit. Admiral Thar watched his fleet slowly get torn apart by a combination of professional military vessels and improvised colonial weapons. It was humiliating. It was unprecedented. It was, he realized, exactly what Ambassador Chen had warned the Emperor would happen. "All ships withdraw," he ordered. "Full retreat to Imperial space. This battle is lost." The Krell fleet pulled back, leaving behind 7 destroyed ships and 23 damaged ones. The human fleet pursued for a short distance, then broke off the chase to ensure Xerxes 7 was secure. On the planet below, 30,000 colonists emerged from their shelters and cheered at the sky. Governor Lin stood in the settlement square, watching the human warships pass overhead. They'd won. Against all odds, against the most powerful empire in the galaxy, they'd actually won. "This isn't over," Rodriguez said, standing beside her. "The Empire won't accept defeat. They'll come back with more ships, more weapons. This was just one battle." "I know," Lin said, "but we won this battle. We proved that humans can fight the Empire and win. That's what matters. Every other human colony in the galaxy just watched us beat the Krell. They know we're not helpless. They know we can fight back." She was right. Across human space, from Earth to the furthest colonies, people watched the Battle of Xerxes 7 and felt something shift. For centuries, humanity had been the newcomers to the galaxy, the young species that other civilizations tolerated but didn't respect. The Krell Empire had treated them as subjects, assuming human colonies would obey imperial law without question. But Xerxes VII had said no, and when the empire tried to force obedience, the colonists had fought back with mining equipment in sheer determination. Then Earth's fleet had arrived and driven off the mighty Krell navy. It was, humans across the galaxy realized, a pivotal moment. The empire could be beaten. The question now was what humanity would do with that knowledge. Chen returned to the Galactic Council chamber 2 days after the battle. The Emperor had refused to see her, but she'd insisted on another meeting. The council reluctantly agreed, curious about what the human would say now that blood had been spilled. The chamber was crowded when Chen arrived. Every species wanted to witness this confrontation. The Krell Empire had ruled the galaxy for 3,000 years without losing a major battle. Now they'd been forced to retreat from a mining colony. The implications were staggering. The Emperor stood at the center of the chamber, his scales locked in a pattern that indicated barely controlled rage. Chen walked to her seat in the back corner and remained standing. She didn't have any cigarettes left. She'd have to make this speech without props. "The Empire demands reparations," the Emperor announced before Chen could speak. "You attacked our fleet without provocation. You destroyed 7 ships and damaged 23 more. You killed 2,000 Krell warriors. This is an act of war, and the Empire will have justice." Chen laughed. She couldn't help it. The absurdity of the Emperor's statement was too much. "You declared war on us," she said, her voice carrying across the chamber. "You sent your fleet to blockade our colony and force us to pay taxes on our own land. You tried to starve 30,000 civilians into submission, and now you want reparations because we fought back? You should have surrendered. Resistance was futile." "Clearly not," Chen said, "since we won." The Emperor's scales flashed through a dozen colors Chen didn't recognize. "One battle means nothing. The Empire will return with more ships. We will crush your colony and every other human world that dares to defy us." "Go ahead," Chen said simply. "Attack Xerxes VII again, or attack Mars, or Earth. Pick any human world you want and send your fleet. See what happens. You cannot defeat the full might of the Empire." "Maybe not, but here's what I know. Every time you attack a human colony, you make every human in the galaxy your enemy. Every time you kill human civilians, you create 1,000 more soldiers who want revenge. Every time you burn a human settlement, you give us another reason to keep fighting until you're gone." Chen walked toward the center of the chamber, directly approaching the Emperor. Several Krell guards moved to intercept her, but the Emperor waved them back. He wanted to hear what she had to say. "I told you before," Chen said, stopping a respectful distance from the Emperor. "Humans don't quit. We don't surrender when the odds turn against us. We fight until we win or until we're dead. And we're really, really hard to kill." "You are threatening the Empire." "No, I'm explaining what's going to happen. You started a war with humanity over a tax dispute. That was stupid. Now you have a choice. You can escalate, bring in more fleets, attack more colonies, and turn this into a galaxy-wide conflict. Or you can back down, admit that Xerxes VII is human territory, and find someone else to bully." "The Empire does not back down." "Then the Empire is going to fall," Chen said flatly. "Because you picked a fight with the wrong species. You thought we'd be easy targets, like all the other species you've conquered. But we're not. We're the species that hunted megafauna with sharpened sticks. We're the species that colonized every environment on our homeworld, from frozen tundra to burning deserts. We're the species that went to space with rockets that had a 50-50 chance of exploding. We don't stop. We don't quit. We don't surrender. And now we're your problem." The chamber was absolutely silent. Every representative listened, understanding that they were witnessing something historic. The Krell Empire was being challenged directly, openly, by a species that had only been in space for a few hundred years. "You have 500 systems," Chen continued. We have 30. You have 10,000 warships. We have maybe 500. By any reasonable measure, you should be able to crush us easily. But that's not how this is going to work. Because we're not going to fight the war you want to fight. We're going to fight the war we're good at. And what war is that? The Emperor asked. Total war, Chen said. War of extinction. War where every human becomes a soldier. Every factory becomes an armory. Every resource gets dedicated to destroying you. We'll build ships faster than you can destroy them. We'll attack your colonies while you're attacking ours. We'll turn this into a grinding, brutal conflict that lasts decades or centuries if necessary. And in the end, one of us won't exist anymore. You would sacrifice your entire species rather than submit? Without hesitation, Chen said, because that's who we are. That's what makes us human. We'd rather die free than live as slaves. She turned to address the full council. Everyone here needs to understand what's happening. The Krell Empire just picked a fight with humanity. They think it's a minor conflict, a small war that will be over quickly. But it's not. It's the beginning of the end for the Empire. Because humans don't forgive. We don't forget. And we sure as hell don't surrender. This is insanity, one of the other representatives called out. A Threen traitor, known for being practical and business-minded. Why not negotiate? Why not compromise? Surely some arrangement can be made. We tried that, Chen said. The Empire demanded taxes on our territory. We said no. They declared war. There's no compromise position between pay us and go to hell. So now we fight. She looked back at the Emperor. His scales had settled into a dark, matte color that indicated deep thought. He was beginning to understand, she realized. He was finally grasping the magnitude of his mistake. I'm going to make you an offer, Chen said. One time, right now, no negotiations. The Empire withdraws all forces from Xerxes 7 and formally recognizes it as human territory. In exchange, humanity agrees not to pursue reparations for the attack, and we don't escalate further. This ends here, today, and we both go our separate ways. And if I refuse, then we go to war, real war, total war, and in 50 years, maybe 100, human ships will be orbiting your capital world, and I'll be standing in your palace asking if you want to surrender, just like I told you before. The Emperor stared at her for a long moment. Around the chamber, representatives held their breath. This was the moment that would define the next century of galactic history. Finally, the Emperor's scales shifted to a pattern that indicated grudging respect. You are either the bravest human I have ever met or the most foolish. Probably both, Chen admitted. Do we have a deal? The Emperor looked around the chamber, seeing the faces of all the species that had submitted to Krell rule over the centuries. He saw fear, yes, but also something else. Hope. These species were watching to see if the mighty empire could be forced to back down. If humans could do it, maybe others could too. He had a choice. Escalate the war and risk everything his empire had built, or accept this one defeat and maintain his grip on power. When he thought about it that way, the choice was obvious. The Empire accepts your terms, he said, each word clearly painful to speak. Xerxes 7 is recognized as human territory. Our forces will withdraw immediately. Chen nodded. Thank you for your wisdom, your Imperial Majesty. I'm sure the Krell Empire will find plenty of other opportunities to demonstrate its power. She turned and walked back to her seat, feeling the eyes of the entire galaxy on her back. She'd done it. She'd actually forced the Empire to back down. It was probably the greatest diplomatic victory of her career, and she didn't even have a cigarette to celebrate with. The Emperor dismissed the council and left the chamber quickly, his guards forming a protective barrier around him. Other representatives filed out more slowly, many of them stopping to stare at Chen with expressions ranging from awe to terror. The human had just rewritten the rules of galactic politics. Chen waited until the chamber was empty, then pulled out her communicator and sent a message to Governor Lin. It's over. The Empire backed down. Xerxes 7 is officially ours. The response came back almost immediately. We knew you could do it. When you coming home? Chen smiled. Home. She'd been born on Earth, trained on Luna, and spent the last 20 years traveling between stations and ships. She didn't really have a home, but maybe it was time to change that. Soon, she typed, I need to stop by Earth first and file about 10,000 reports. But after that, I might take you up on that offer of a homestead on Xerxes 7. I hear the colony is nice this time of year. It's always nice when you're free, Lin replied. Chen left the chamber and headed back to her ship. She had work to do, reports to file, meetings to attend. But for the first time in months, she felt like she could relax. The war was over before it really began. Humanity had proven itself to the galaxy. And somewhere on Xerxes 7, 30,000 colonists were celebrating their freedom. It wasn't a perfect ending. The Krell Empire still ruled most of the galaxy. Humanity still had only 30 systems compared to their 500. The balance of power hadn't really changed. But something else had changed. The myth of imperial invincibility was broken. Every species in the galaxy now knew that the Empire could be beaten. Chen wondered how long it would take before other species started testing the Empire's limits. How long before rebellions started in the conquered territories? How long before the entire structure of Krell dominance began to crumble? Not her problem, she decided. She'd done her job. She'd protected human interests and avoided a catastrophic war. Whatever happened next would be someone else's responsibility. She made it back to Earth 3 days later and spent a week in debriefings, explaining over and over what had happened and why. The government was pleased, but nervous. They'd won this confrontation, but what about the next one? What if the Empire decided to attack again, despite the treaty? Then we fight, Chen told the president during their private meeting. That's what humans do. We fight when we have to, and we win because we don't have any other choice. The Krell learned that. Every other species in the galaxy is learning it now. We're not victims. We're not going to be pushed around. And if someone tries, we push back harder. The president nodded slowly. You've become something of a folk hero, you know. There are songs about you on Earth. Vid dramas in production. Children dressing up as Ambassador Chen for Halloween. That's horrifying, Chen said. Please tell me you're joking. Only slightly. You did something remarkable. You faced down the most powerful empire in the galaxy and won without firing a shot. That's the kind of victory that becomes legend. Chen thought about that. She hadn't felt legendary during those moments in the council chamber. She'd felt terrified, unsure, desperate. She'd been bluffing half the time, hoping the Emperor would believe her stories about human determination and stubbornness. She'd smoked cigarettes to keep her hands from shaking, not because she was trying to look cool. But maybe that was what made it work. She'd been genuinely willing to accept war rather than submission. She'd meant every word she said about humans fighting to the death. And the Emperor had seen that sincerity and believed her. What happens now? Chen asked. Do I stay as ambassador to the council? If you want, but honestly, I think you've earned a rest. Take some time off. Visit Xerxes 7. See what you saved. I might do that, Chen said. She did. 2 weeks later, she caught a transport to Xerxes 7 and arrived to a hero's welcome. The colonists threw a celebration that lasted 3 days. Governor Lin gave her a tour of the settlement, showing her all the repairs they'd made after the battle. Engineer Park showed her his workshop, where he'd converted mining drones into missiles. Rodriguez showed her the defensive positions, where colonists had prepared to fight ground battles. You built something special here, Chen told Lin on the last day of her visit. They were standing on a hill overlooking the settlement, watching the sun set over the mining operations in the distance. You didn't just defend your colony, you showed the whole galaxy what humans are capable of. We just didn't want to pay their stupid tax, Lin said with a smile. Everything else kind of snowballed from there. That's how it usually works. Small decisions become big consequences. Chen looked at the settlement, at the homes and farms and children playing in the streets. You know they're going to tell stories about this for generations. The colony that stood up to an empire. Good. Let them tell stories. Let every human colony and every other species hear about what happened here. Maybe next time some empire decides to push people around, they'll think twice. Chen nodded. She reached into her jacket for a cigarette, then remembered she'd run out. She'd need to pick up more next time she was on Earth. Or maybe, she thought, it was time to quit. She'd made it through the most important diplomatic meeting of her life on her last cigarette. That seemed like a good place to stop. I'm going to stay here for a while, she told Lin. If that's okay, I need a break from diplomacy and politics and empires. I just want to be somewhere quiet for a bit. You're welcome to stay as long as you want, Lin said. We've got plenty of room, and honestly, having you here makes everyone feel safer. Like if you're here, nothing bad can happen. That's a lot of pressure. You've handled pressure before. Chen laughed. Yeah, I guess I have. They stood on the hill as the sun disappeared below the horizon and the stars came out. Somewhere up there, the Krell Empire was licking its wounds and planning its next move. Somewhere, other species were watching and learning. Somewhere, humans were building ships and training soldiers and preparing for whatever came next. But on Xerxes 7, at least for this moment, there was peace. The colonists had fought for their freedom and won. They'd proven that humans couldn't be pushed around, couldn't be conquered, couldn't be broken. And they'd done it with mining equipment and stubbornness and sheer refusal to accept defeat. Chen smiled, thinking about the look on the Emperor's face when she'd refused to back down, thinking about all the times she'd been scared but kept going anyway, thinking about how sometimes the most important victories come not from strength, but from the simple refusal to quit. The galaxy was changing. Humanity's place in it was changing. And Chen had been at the center of it all, armed with nothing but cigarettes and confidence, and an absolute certainty that humans would fight rather than surrender. It was, she thought, one hell of a story. And the best part was that it was true.